Hello, and welcome back to the Barrens. Today, we will be talking about Rasputin, a man that had become a center of fear and legend in Russia. You can see him portrayed in media such as the movie Anastasia, which was released in 1997. A self-proclaimed holy man, Rasputin was an influencer in Russia's reign in the 1800s. Rasputin was born on January 26, 1869 as Grigory Yefimovich Novik in Pokrovskoy. His father was a farmer and he had 7 siblings, all of whom died in either infancy or during childbirth. There have been rumors, however, that a 9th child named Feodosia survived, and he was close to the woman and had even become the godfather of her children. According to historian Joseph T. Furman, the records that have survived do not permit us to say more than that. Other than beginning life as a peasant, not much is known about Rasputin's childhood. After his rise to infamy, plenty of theories and myths arose, but very little of his past was proven factual. Some historians have wagered that the man had no formal education, while others claim he did attend school. What is agreed upon, however, is that he stayed illiterate far into his early adulthood. Records also exist that propose he was involved in drinking, small thefts, and disrespecting local authorities. Other charges such as stealing horses, blasphemy, and bearing false witness were also attached to his name, but no evidence could be found of such charges. Because he had garnered a lewd reputation, he had gained the surname Rasputin, which means debauched one. Outside of this, historians have claimed his early life was like a black hole. In 1886, Rasputin met a girl named Praskovia Dubrovina during his venture to Abalk, Russia. They saw one another for several months until ultimately marrying in February of 1887 when Rasputin was 19 years old. Throughout the couple's life, they had 7 children, though only 3 lived to adulthood: Dmitri, 1895, Maria, 1898, and Varvara, 1900. It was in 1897 that a restless Rasputin found a renewed interest in religion and left his pregnant wife and infant son for a pilgrimage. Some people claim that he left in order to escape the consequences of horse theft, while others say it was because of Melody Zaborovsky, who had been a theological student. Whatever the reason, Rasputin found himself at the St. Nicholas Monastery in Verkhoturye. It was here he is thought to have learned to read and write and met a man named Makary, who humbled him. He returned to his home disheveled and changed, becoming a vegetarian, quitting alcohol, and singing and praying far more than before. He complained that some of the monks partook in homosexuality and said the monastic life was too coercive. He built a chapel in his father's cellar, where rumors spread that women would give him ceremonial baths before sermons and that they practiced self-flagellation and had orgies. The next decade was spent traveling the country to visit different holy sites, leaving home for months or even years at a time. He began to claim that he was a holy man, or starets, and had the ability to heal the sick and see into the future. During this time, he had gained a small number of followers and survived his travels by taking donations and fortune-telling. His ventures led him to St. Petersburg in 1903, where he was welcomed by the inspector of the religious academy, a man named Theophan, as well as Hermogen, who was the bishop of Saratov. It was the bishop that was impressed by Rasputin's powers and introduced him to the Romanov family. It was the Tsar's son Alexei, who had been suffering from hemophilia, in which the blood won't clot after a wound. And after falling seriously ill in 1908, Rasputin was brought to the palace. He had managed to calm the child and ease his symptoms, and thus convinced the Tsar and his wife of his abilities. The methods are unclear, though some speculate it was the work of hypnosis. They also fancied him for the way he told them what they wanted to hear, and how they eased the wife's anxieties with his counsel. It was mainly the Tsarina, Alexandra, that came to heavily rely on the man. When her husband had counsels, she would send him Rasputin's stick and comb so that he could get his vitality, and she believed that objects handled by Rasputin had powers. In fact, in an entry she wrote one night while he was away, she stated, "How distraught I am without you. My soul is only at peace. I only rest when you, my teacher, are seated beside me and I kiss your hands and lean my head on your blessed shoulders. Then I only have one wish, to sleep for centuries on your shoulders in the embraces. His popularity amongst the Romanov family made him unpopular in the court and among circles of the government. On top of this, he had taken more so to his lascivious ways and began heavily consuming alcohol and obtaining several mistresses. It was rumored that he also practiced ecstatic worship through orgiastic sex. And while officials tried to discredit the man, Nicholas II worried about banishing him because of the way he had eased his son's ailments. Things would soon take a drastic change as Russia entered the Triple Entente during World War I. Nicholas II left to lead his troops in September of 1915, and Alexandria was left in charge. Because she had taken Rasputin's counsel so seriously, she even began taking his advice in matters of the government. They would relieve some ministers of their posts while placing other individuals into positions of power. General Alexeyev tried to convince Alexandra of Rasputin's ineptitude, though only succeeded in making an enemy of her. While the Tsar struggled to lead his armies, the defeats were alarming, and he began to take the blame for them. The country was led into one bad decision after another until ultimately the people began to try and assassinate Rasputin. All attempts failed, however, until 1916. Prince Felix Yusupov, husband of the Tsar's niece, Vladimir Mitrofanovich, a member of the Duma, the Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, the Tsar's cousin, and several other conservatives began conspiring against Rasputin. From December 29th through the 30th of 1916, Rasputin was to visit Yusupov's home. It was here that, according to legend, he was fed poisoned cakes and wine. Then, when he failed to meet his maker, Yusupov shot him. Rasputin managed to flee into the courtyard where he was met with another shot from Porishkevich. The party then tied him up and threw him into a hole in the ice of the Neva River. His body was found frozen by a river policeman, 65 meters from the bridge. Felix, Dmitry, and Vladimir were interviewed by the officer. The Tsar rejected a petition to allow the conspirators to remain in the city, stating that no one had the right to commit murder. He expelled them from Petrograd, which we know as St. Petersburg. Rasputin's death is widely speculated and debated, as certain details given were lacking evidence. And on examination, it appeared that Rasputin had his genitals crushed and that his face and body were beaten by a hard object. Though autopsies say otherwise, many people claim that Rasputin was still alive after being thrown into the icy waters. Even more interesting were the words Rasputin had uttered to the Tsar before his death. "If I am killed by common men, you and your children will rule Russia for centuries to come. If I am killed by one of your stock, you and your family will be killed by the Russian people." With government corruption filling the empire and the immensely damaged economy, moderates joined radical Bolshevik in a cry to overthrow the Tsar. On March 15, 1970, Nicholas II abdicated the throne, and the 300-year Romanov rule was brought to an end. They were later executed by firing squad and bayoneted to death by Bolsheviks' troops. That's it for this episode. I hope you found it intriguing. I had been meaning to do some research on Rasputin for a long time, and I'm glad I was able to use the information I gathered for an episode. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and do svidaniya.